I'm going to be sharing my story on how being a young achiever really feels. The ups, the downs, and everything in between. And then sharing how I mastered a new industry in just under 5 years. Hi, I'm Shivali Bennion, and this is my Oxford Talk. When Oxford Talks approached me to have a conversation around what it really means to be a young achiever, I was excited but nervous, because I've never really thought of myself that way before. Statistically speaking, as a 26-year-old, working class, ethnically diverse woman in the UK, I should be earning under a third of my salary in a low level of seniority within a non-technical field. Instead, I'm the head of commercial, where I lead on projects like consulting businesses on how to scale digitally, sales forecasting, and marketing strategy. In preparation for this talk, I started reflecting on the typical question, what would you tell your younger self if you could? And to be honest, I struggled. It's easy to say that working hard got me to where I am today, but personally, I think that's an oversimplification. Growing up in a Sri Lankan, English, and Caribbean household, I always saw that hard work resulted in reward. Whether it be my dad doing 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, or watching my dyslexic mum complete a psychology degree and becoming an English teacher while raising me. My first paying job was the age of 8 on TV and commercial sets, followed later by 3 internships, 6 years of retail, and a full-time job in my final year of university. At 23, I went on to build a digital marketing and e-commerce department from scratch, with online revenue over $1 million for the first time in the company's history, and achieving 190% year-on-year growth with a 10% reduction in marketing costs as a direct result, with all the hiring, firing, and P&L responsibility that comes along with that. By the age of 25, I had established myself as a digital marketing expert and had managed over $20 million in advertising spend. Despite the 30 under 30 lists and the young protégé articles in the news, the reality of success at a younger age often correlates to being asked, who's really the decision maker? Who manages budgets? Or can the manager join the call? Or, even worse, once being told by a leader that as a woman you will expire at 30. I know, as I'll age, I'll have to battle different misconceptions and perhaps have the opposite issues. Just like the pressure of choosing a career without real-world experiences, the difficulties don't stop. They just change over time. If I had to put my achievement down to 3 things, it would be embracing new experiences, having mentors, and a touch of luck. Getting out of your comfort zone and challenging what people expect of you is hard. It's especially hard when the risk of failure is so much higher when you don't have a financial safety net. Unfortunately, I didn't have the ability to take a gap year or be able to rely on bank and mum and dad. So there was no real option for me to not work from a very young age. Way before graduating, my career became a focus for me, and I've always been conscious of safeguarding my future. 6 years ago, when I first started digital marketing, it was a very small element of a business's strategy, if the business had a digital focus at all. The majority of marketing budgets used to be spent on traditional PR, out-of-home advertising, and TV. For recent linguistic graduates, it would have been a lot more straightforward to go into a field that had the benefit of historical ways of working. But I felt there was an opportunity to specialise in digital marketing as the internet was becoming more and more influential in consumer buying patterns, and social media was becoming a fundamental part of most people's lives. So I made the calculated risk to pursue a career that didn't have a high level of certainty. This meant that I had to utilise my studies and take a high test and learn approach methodology to almost everything I did in life, and be okay with things not going to plan. At the time, digital advertising platforms were still in their early stages of development, so they were constantly evolving. Personally, I was so interested in the amount of data that advertisers had access to and the consumer psychology that goes along with it. This data, if used correctly, enabled brands to get a much better picture of their audiences and engage extremely effectively via their online presence, whether that be through advertising, organic social media, or their website. So, I started with a role that focused on digital advertising platforms, spending roughly $75,000 a day in Facebook ads in 2017. And this was simply unheard of at the time. The performance marketing management position enabled me to get the best understanding of cost per acquisition and the cost of advertising intrinsically. But I was also interested in what happened to potential customers after they clicked on the ads. So I went on to support website optimization and customer journey mapping, which gave me a real holistic view of the whole digital ecosystem, as I started to look into all the possible factors that could convince someone to buy a £20 eye product online. From there, I furthered my knowledge of email marketing, as this was and still is one of the most cost-effective ways of driving traffic and reducing advertising costs. It also supported engaging with the true community behind the brand, which gave me a much better understanding of key metrics like lifetime value. Once I mastered these hard skills via online courses and taking more responsibility on at work, I went on to explore organic strategies for growing social media channels and getting a better understanding of content, as brands creative is likely to become the most important aspect in future digital strategies. I'm now extremely confident in my ability to advise and consult businesses on their entire digital strategy, as I've been personally involved and implemented each part of the process myself. In summary, I've always kept looking for new knowledge and chose an extremely new industry with few leaders really understanding the complexity of the digital environment. Based on the fact that it's risen so fast, and this is a completely new business channel. It's become a trend for leaders to say that failing is the only way to succeed. But the reason is because if you don't fail, you don't learn. And if you don't try, you'll never know what could have been. That confidence in my ability to perform at the highest level is something quite new and can be quite overwhelming and needs some support from time to time. That's where my mentors have come in. I've been really fortunate to have C-suite executives believe in me and have been exposed to leadership decisions from a very young age. That mentorship and guidance is what stopped me from listening to people who constantly try to undermine my authority and expertise. It's also given me the ability to test new technologies and platforms to try and really get that early adopter advantage. And then having those support systems in my friend and family has made me question any imposter syndrome that might pop up from time to time. And then finally, I got lucky. I did well in school and got into King's College London, a highly prestigious university where I still go back to mentor to this day. I wasn't gifted with inherited connections, and as someone who's had to start from the bottom, I know how painful it can be in that journey on the rise to the top. But I was lucky enough to have found a career path that worked for me in a pivotal time in my industry. Ultimately, this goes back to, what would you tell your younger self? And I don't think I'd like to have that conversation. Your past is so one-sided. Nothing you can say to your younger self could ever change your future, as we're constantly evolving based on every small decision we make. I personally wouldn't have changed anything, and it's easy to judge things you could have done retrospectively, but it's much harder to make the decisions that aren't the best for now, but can help your future self. As I look towards what's next, I was asked, what would I like to get out of this talk? And for me, it's simple. If you're a young leader watching this, or being intimidated by not feeling like you really fit into an industry, you're not alone. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you're in a leadership position, take the chance on that underdog, because they might go on to make you millions.